Hello, everyone. It's Jerry at the Fledge, and welcome to another episode of Every Damn Day. I am broadcasting for the last time in the next week from the sanctuary today. I'm going to be traveling a little bit. Got to get my daughter to California, and I'll be doing it on the road for the next few days, and then in LA for a few days after that. So, look for some new backgrounds from me. And want to give a couple shout outs, one to the Fledge Foundation. Here's the big announcement, I guess. Raven was the executive director of the Fledge Foundation up until last Friday, and then she flew off to California, and Shannon will be the new executive director of the Fledge Foundation for the time being. And I've been asking my guests the last 5 shows, I think, who they'd like to give a shout out to, and in perfect fashion, my guest today said, let's do it for our wives. So shout out to Shannon, shout out to Jody Dail, and that basically gives away who my guest is. So my great friend, my older friend, Ken Dail, and I don't mean older like you're old, because I'm older than you, but you and I have known each other for quite a long time, it seems like now.
Yeah, it's been a few years.
Yeah, it has. So what you been doing today, though?
Well, today it's Island Art Festival Day in Grand Ledge, so we checked out the Grand Ledge Farmers Market, which is now, I think they call the Market on the Grand, and then we went down to the island and checked out the booths down there, and saw some great vendors and great artists, and that was kind of cool. If you're free today and not doing nothing, go check out some of the small businesses there, the artisans and crafters and stuff like that. And other than that, just headed here to hang out and chat with you for a few.
Well, I'm glad you did. I think when you signed up for the last possible show it would let you sign up for.
Right.
So you were trying to snake Ciso's spot. He's been wanting that last spot forever.
Yeah.
But I think this is a good show for you because I knew you were going to be here. I really needed that reliability today. So thank you so very, very much.
Yeah. Well, thanks for putting the show on and for letting me come on today. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. So let's jump into that. Tell us about you. Where were you born and raised? Went to school? What's your deal?
Born and raised. I was in a hospital. I don't really remember it. It was a long, long time ago. Anyway, over in Flint, Genesee County. Grew up in Burton, little town of Burton, just outside of Flint. It's kind of a little wedge between Flint and Grand Blanc, if you're familiar with the area. Went to Bendel schools. Go Bendel Tigers, if there's any Bendel Tigers watching or listening. Graduated, went away to Central Michigan, and then from there, moved all over the state, up in Charlevoix for a couple of years, Lansing, back to Flint. Landed in St. John's and have been in Grand Ledge for about the last 20 years. So kind of all over the Lower Peninsula.
What'd you study at CMU?
Sleeping, having a good time. My degree was in outdoor parks and recreation, which thrilled my parents to no end. We're going to send you to school for 4 or 5 years to get a degree so you can go out and get a good job. And I got my degree in camping, which is good. I also met Jody as a result of that. She was part of the Parks and Rec program too, so we met at Central. Took us another 7 years before we, actually went on our first date, but that's all right. So I got my degree in Parks and Rec, but I got my minor in substance abuse education, which is kind of a broad brush prevention, education, and treatment, just kind of a base level. That was my minor. And that's actually where I spent the next 27 years of my professional life, was working in the substance abuse prevention fields.
And man, we could talk about that for 5.5 hours.
Easily,
more.
Easily. Yeah.
Do you wanna spend a little time on that right now?
Yeah. We always, when I was growing up, it was all kind of the classroom stuff. Let's teach the kids and teach the kids and teach the kids and make sure that they have the tools they need to make wise, healthy decisions. And then what we kind of figured out over time was young people, it kind of doesn't matter how much education you put in their head. A lot of them are still prone to making stupid decisions based on, brain development and the feelings and the group think at the time and stuff like that. So over the years, prevention kind of moved from the individual focus to more of an environmental focus and a broad brush focus. So a lot of what we started looking at was policy and policy enforcement and availability of alcohol and tobacco and other drugs. What else is going on in the community? If your community has, beer tents, how are they handled? How is your law enforcement handling things? What's going on in your schools? What's going on with your sports leagues? How are your coaches behaving, et cetera, et cetera. So it really took it from, pointing the finger at, hey, you kids, better do a better job not doing drugs, to, hey, adults, you better do a better job building a community, a safe and healthy community where kids, number one, can't get their hands on, whether it's alcohol, tobacco, or illicit drugs. And number two, they have other options and other alternatives. It's like so many places you go, the kids will tell you there's nothing to do. Well, guess what? They say that in Lansing, they say that in Grand Ledge, they say that in Houghton, Michigan, where there's nothing to do unless you're an outdoorsy person. I've been up to the tip of the thumb one day in Detroit the next day, and guess what the kids said in both areas? There's nothing to do around here. So we learned over the years it's the environment, stupid. It's like it really is. It has to do with the influences that kids see 24/7 that help them either make good decisions, bad decisions, healthy decisions, unhealthy decisions, that kind of stuff. So,
so 25 years ago, was it still real heavy on say no to drugs and that kind of the war? Well, the war on drugs is still kind of going on.
Yeah, the war on drugs is going on. Yeah, still big time. Which is an unwinnable war. It's not a war on drugs. It's a war on human beings. And, like you pointed out 100,000 times, it's a war on the poor. It's a war on people that don't have resources to be able to make up for stupid things that they do, or mistakes that they make. We see people of privilege who can skate with stuff and get away with stuff in ways that brown and black communities and poor communities just can't do. So the war on drugs is just, there's not a whole lot positive that's come out of it. 25 years ago, a lot of it, again, was kind of the individual focus. If we teach kids about the negative consequences, then they're less likely to use. And it's, no fault of us at the time, because you can only do what you know. And 25, 30 years ago, the science and the research was pretty weak when it came to how do we prevent drugs. A lot of it was also like, let's build your self-esteem. And what we found out was when we increase kids' self-esteem, then we have a lot of kids that feel good about themselves doing drugs. So we kind of went through a lot of iterations of what's it going to take. And eventually, like I say, it came to the place that we said, hey, it's the environment. It's not only parenting, it's schooling, it's law enforcement, it's policy. It's been a progression. A lot of people in the prevention field, when you say Nancy Reagan and just say no, we'll understand her words, her just say no was kind of the shot across the bow that got things started. So if we were still relying on that as a strategy, oh my gosh, forget it, it's not going to work. But it did get the ball rolling, at least,
yeah.
And unfortunately that ball sometimes rolled over communities and rolled over people that it shouldn't have rolled over. And that's where that, that kind of war on drugs really just F things up royally. But to just say no, I mean, that's, without her shouting that from the rooftops, who knows how much longer it would have been before people started saying, gee, maybe we should prevent use on the front end, as opposed to just cleaning up the mess on the back end. So it had its place, but it's history, it's part of the history books, that's all.
Yeah. Were you involved? Well, the crack epidemic is kind of coming back, actually. In this neighborhood in particular, there's a lot of crack right now. There's a lot of meth and speed, they call it. And of course, the opioid epidemic.
Yeah.
Did you see both of them happening?
Yeah. So the crack epidemic, I was mostly at Central at the time, but I grew up, in Genesee County, just outside of Flint, and it hit Flint pretty damn hard. You can imagine. I mean, Flint's a pretty high minority. And at the time, poverty was pretty prevalent. And that's one of the things that we know, even though drugs are no respecters of person. I mean, they'll wipe out a rich white guy just as quick as a poor minority person. But when it comes to the community-wide aspect and the numbers, the raw numbers, the crack epidemic hit Flint really, really hard. And of course, we're only 45 minutes to an hour down the road from Detroit. And Detroit's at the time was one of the largest African American minority, had the largest minority African American population in the country for its size. So you want to talk about a minority community getting hit hard? Yeah, crack hit Detroit pretty hard. And that's when I was in college. So I saw that just as I was starting my journey in college of how do we keep people from using drugs. It was right in the middle of that first kind of crack epidemic. So,
and then I don't know, early 90s, is that when the opioids started picking up?
Well, there was a lot of policy change at the federal level with the opioids, and we can shake our fists at the drug companies, and we should. They screwed a lot of people over, and they made a shitload of money on doing things that, burned down neighborhoods and took your daughter's life. It's bad stuff. So the drug companies are very, very at fault. But there was policy that went on at the national level by people who should have been protecting us that not only dropped the ball. I mean, dude, they threw the ball in the stands. I mean, they royally blew it with policy, and that's what opened the door for the drug companies to do what they did. So it was a whole combination. Again, it wasn't just that a bunch of kids suddenly decided, hey, let's start shooting heroin at a party because it looks like fun. That wasn't what it was. It was national policy. It was the drug companies. It was money. It was greed. So it took a minute, for all that stuff to happen. But yeah, it was probably mid to late 90s is when those major changes started happening policy-wise. And then we started seeing the fallout, down the road. Addiction doesn't happen, with a person's first use. It takes time. Let me take that back. Addiction can happen with a person's first use. But on the community level, on the changing rates, on the seeing the numbers increase drastically for whole populations, that takes a minute. That community-wide addiction takes a minute to happen. The individual, there's a lot of people that can use one time and that's it. They're off to the races, and it doesn't always have good outcomes.
That was always I was an experimenter. A lot about me, and that kept me away from crack. As they always told you, you're going to get addicted the first time, and I was like, man, I don't think I want to go through life addicted to crack.
Right. No.
So, what was your epiphany? Did you have an epiphany somewhere where you're like, this is the thing that I would really, if I could press a button right now, I would get rid of this one thing or do this differently?
As far as substance use goes? Or?
Yeah.
We've always said in the prevention field, there's no silver bullet. Unfortunately, it's not one thing. It's a huge combination of things. It is parenting, it is schooling, it is law enforcement, it is availability, it is how are policies being enforced and how are policies being passed. It's the greed, the money, that comes into it. I think even if we were to decriminalize or legalize, every substance today, it wouldn't dig us out of the problem. It would. I don't want to say solve because it won't. It would minimize the problem in some senses, incarceration and people spending their life in jail for selling pot. Bullshit. So if we legalized, it wouldn't get us out of the woods. It would just change what the woods look like. So there really isn't a silver bullet. There's not a one thing that would, suddenly make the difference. It's a lot of things. And that's why we talk about kind of the environment and the community and, what are we doing in Lansing and in Grand Ledge and in Wacusta and in DeWitt and, what's going on in those communities.
Yeah. I always, or sometimes I think, it's just a symptom of these bigger things. It's a symptom of homelessness. It's a symptom of, I don't know, some people do drugs to feel better, right? It makes them feel good. It's the first one. I mean, that's how they get started.
It's a reason. Yeah.
And or to escape, I guess maybe would be another big reason. but at the end of the day, that's not where it heads for them. I mean, we can sit out on this porch. We're both at the Fledge right now. We could sit out in this porch for less than an hour, and somebody who's either addicted to heroin or meth or crack would definitely come up on the porch and talk to us.
Yeah.
And I have no idea sometimes what to do except for just try to help them get food, give them clean needles, give them some fentanyl test strips, make sure wherever they're going has Narcan, and hope that there's a better thing to do tomorrow.
Right.
And that they're still alive.
Yeah.
And I don't know. You know how I feel. I'm all over the place on this with the emotion that I feel about it and my hatred for like the Secklers. You know how I feel about them, but also the doctors. You know, I had a doctor in DeWitt. I would go for a physical and he'd write me a prescription of Vicodin.
Yeah.
Because I had it once after a surgery and he thought I liked it.
Right.
And I was like, why are you giving me this prescription? It does not make sense to me. Yeah. But a lot of incentives for them to do that, right?
Yeah. And a lot of miseducation. I mean, even though it's easy to vilify all the doctors, but understand they were also getting faulty education from the drug companies. You know, so there's a lot of doctors that, you know, one of the things to keep in mind is doctors always have at least 100,000 things going on, you know, with the education that they're getting and whatnot. They don't necessarily have time to sit and research, what does this drug do to my customer? They have to rely on a pharmaceutical rep to be honest with them. You know, and the pharmaceutical rep has to count on their parent company to be honest with the rep to teach the doctor. Well, if the pharmaceutical company is slinging bullshit, then the pharmaceutical rep goes into the doctor's office and slings it, and the doctor doesn't have time to research all these different drugs and all these medical conditions and the new malpractice laws. And so when the pharmaceutical rep says, this stuff isn't addictive, they go, okay, all right, then that's what we're going to start giving. That, I don't want to say excuse, but that reason for overprescribing was legitimate up to a certain point. But then there came a point where even doctors like have a brain in their head and should be catching on that, like, hey, guess what? This stuff is not the perfect drug. It really can cause these substance use disorders, the addictions. It's doing all this stuff. It's messing up people's bodies. If you're on opioids long term, you got to take 7 or 8 other drugs to make up for the symptoms of what the opioid's doing to you. And that's not even the overdose piece. And then what happens if you get bad opioids or fentanyl, or if you're using illicitly because blah, blah, blah. Yeah. It is definitely one of those issues that can be talked about all day. And we can point the finger in a lot of directions, and it needs to be pointed in a lot of directions. But most of it needs to be pointed up the food chain. It was the federal government that blew it. And then it was the pharmaceutical industry that just, once they got, the okay to go ahead and be greedy, they said, okay, let's do that. Let's see how much money we can make, not how many lives can we save. So. And
then there's alcohol that's been around for a long time, which is kind of the hidden epidemic sometimes.
Yeah.
Like people don't always put it in the same category as, like, let's say heroin, for example.
Right.
But like withdrawing from alcohol can kill you faster than any of them.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And not comfortably. I mean, I've heard the horror stories. We have a friend who, she's convinced that her brother died from his alcohol withdrawals, that his family thought it would be a good thing to literally lock him in a room to go through his alcohol withdrawals, and it killed him. It took his life. So yeah, it'll kill people. It's, alcohol is, it's a mind altering and a metabolic poison, just like most of the mind altering substances, and it'll do screwy things to you. Whether it's when you're taking it or when you're withdrawn from it, if you've developed that tolerance and that addiction to it. So.
Yeah. Well, thank you for spending a little time on that.
It's what I've done for the last 25 years. I mean, it's, like your kids got beat over the head with entrepreneurialism growing up, so they know a lot about running their own business. My kids knew what a blood alcohol content was when they were 7 years old. We talked about addiction pretty openly in our family, both. I mean, I lost my brother to a alcohol use disorder, to alcoholism. We have an uncle who, was pretty wrapped up in his addiction, is still alive today. But we talked about that real openly in our house. And it is definitely something that it's in the blood. It's like when you know that stuff and you don't share it, you need to be sharing that stuff. People need to know about it. So thanks for, even though I'm, here talking about Rebranded, and my connection with the Fledge over the years has definitely been more entrepreneurial than prevention. It's still, even though I'm not in that field today, it's still in my heart. It's important stuff. So thanks for letting me get some of that out.
Well, thanks for getting it out. You want to go back there someday?
I don't know. There's, yeah, I do. I mean, I love it, but it would have to be under different circumstances. And that, the position that I had, the agency that I worked with, we had a lot of freedom to be creative with some things, to kind of take the research and figure out if we can adapt the research on kind of a statewide level and do some things that were kind of outside the box. And that's where my heart was kind of being creative with it, and being, again, entrepreneurial with it, and figuring out how can we turn this into a kind of a bigger thing. If it's an effective approach, how do we bring that to scale? And those jobs are few and far between in the substance use field in general. It would almost have to be a foundation that would say, hey, we like what you're saying. We're going to fund you for a couple of years to run with this idea. Because the government funding has to be more research based and more kind of put in its own boxes. And that's, it's taxpayer dollars. You can't just get crazy with them, do whatever you want. You got to follow the rules of taxpayer funded programs. So anyway, it's an interesting mind game to think about what would it look like if I ever went back, but we'll see.
Well, let's find someone that'll offer that grant and do something.
Well, I learned from you, sponsor yourself. Don't sit there and wait for somebody else to bring your ship in. Swim your ass out there, and if the ship isn't there, build it. So yeah. I guess that's where I need to go next.
I got involved with some big organizations that I don't know, I thought we could make a difference and stuff like that, and they worked on stigma a lot, which I thought was very important. I mean, this is, there's no way you could look at one of these women that walk up on this porch and think they need to be in jail, or that's a horrible person. You can see, that used to be a little kid. That used to be a baby. That was, a lot of people loved that little kid probably. And I had to move to the harm reduction space because I just don't know what else to do right now, except for love people. Connection, right? Connection's the opposite of addiction.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. I mean, one of the things that you said earlier, not all of us are trained counselors and trained therapists. We have no idea how to get somebody from kind of active addiction and active use to active recovery. It's not my skill set, but what can I do? Well, I can help them get to the next day, because dead people don't recover. If they go out and overdose tonight and die, that's the end of their story. But if they go out tonight and overdose and somebody gives them the drug that you were talking about,
naloxone.
Yeah, the naloxone, and they live another day, maybe that's the day. Maybe that's the day. Maybe it isn't. Maybe they go out that night and overdose again, and somebody, gives them a dose again, and then they go out the next day and they overdose again, but then maybe that fifth time is the day that they suddenly go, And if they need a sandwich, give them a sandwich. Damn it, they need a sandwich. They don't need a lecture. They've had lectures. They don't need a ride to treatment. They're not ready for treatment. They need a sandwich. They're hungry. If I'm hungry, I hope somebody would say, dude, let's get a sandwich. All right. So I think that approach that you were talking about, that love and that connection, in the absence of not knowing what to do next, just be a human being. How would you treat a human being that's not addicted, that would walk up on the porch and say, man, I'm hungry. Oh, we got a program for that. Give you some food. It wouldn't be the reason you're hungry is because you haven't eaten enough nutrients, and you're not going to lecture. You're going to give them a sandwich, So I think the approach you were talking about earlier is, in the absence of being a trained licensed therapist, which I'm not, in the absence of that, give them a sandwich, give them some love, tell them hi. Yeah, give them some fentanyl strips or testing strips.
Yes. Thank you for all the work you've done there. I love you for that.
You're welcome. You're welcome. It's a good time.
Let's go into some of your projects. You want to start with like Rebranded Creations?
Yeah. So Rebranded Creations started as a fledgling business. It was really you and the spirit of the Fledge out in Grand Ledge that kind of got things rolling for me with Rebranded Creations. And all we do is take stuff and make stuff. We take discarded stuff, mostly like pallets and lumber and discarded lumber from construction sites. And when people are doing home projects, they always post on Facebook, "Hey, I got all this lumber. I don't know what to do with it." Hey, I know. We'll make cornhole boards out of it, or we'll make Jenga blocks out of it, or we'll make, a ring toss game or a washer toss game, or, just something fun, and then try to sell it, at craft shows or on Facebook or whatever. So it really was just a side hustle, kind of to have fun, and that's where it's remained. I mean, it's still 4 or 5 years later here, whatever it is. It's just kind of a hobby side hustle. I'm haven't done a lot of building this year. I have a new job. I'm doing more manual labor. So when I get home at the end of the day, it's like, oh man, my body's hurting. So I haven't been real super active out in the garage and out in my driveway, but I am trying to build a workshop, just a kind of a storage place to keep my stuff. Cause my wife wants to put her vehicle in the garage or some strange thing like that. So that's what I've been working on, is just trying to get a workshop space set up so I can get some room in the garage to use the garage for the rest of the family. But it's been fun. I've learned a lot. I've had a good time with it. I've a friend of mine challenged me, I don't know, 5-6 years ago, that I didn't have a hobby, and I didn't at the time. And I thought, well, I've always wanted to do a little bit of woodworking, so I guess I'll try that. So the Fledge came around about the same time that he challenged me, and my mom had some of my dad's old power tools from, his 1960 Craftsman table saw and stuff like that she was ready to part with. And so a lot of forces came together all at once. And I came up with the name Rebranded Creations. Just, we take stuff and rebrand it. We take old stuff and turn it into new stuff or newer stuff. And so threw the name together and put up a Facebook page and, goofed off with it for the next few years. So that's where we are today.
Well, the last project you did for us was a big Jenga set, or two of them actually. Yeah. And then we left those blank boards all over the place for people to write different conversational prods or conversational whatever on.
Yeah.
And you should have seen them playing at the Fledge's Freedom Weekend.
Katie sent me a few pictures. I think Shannon sent me a couple pictures. So yeah, it was cool to see people using it, and I saw the blocks sitting there in the sanctuary, and saw the writing all over them. And I think that's a really cool way to take the Jenga blocks and use them to become more than just two people interacting, playing the game. Now it's that community. It's like, hey, that's the question I wrote on that block. What do you think about it? So that's pretty cool.
You want me to go grab one and we'll just talk about whichever one I randomly grab?
Yeah.
Just so all right. Good. I'm going to try to stay random, I promise.
Yeah. You and I are not afraid of random, so that sounds like a good idea.
I got to do it. All right. Here it is. So here's a block, and it says, "How can I be a teachable neighbor?" Wow. You want to go first?
Yeah. I'm not sure. I guess before I can teach something, I got to know something about you. Like I would probably never try to teach you how to start a business because, well, you've kind of done that. But I might teach you about some aspect of it that maybe you don't know how to do, or something that you've never done before, or something that I might know how to do. So I think maybe part of being a teachable neighbor is just get to know your neighbors. If your neighbors, does canning, they probably don't need you to tell them how to can stuff, like canning strawberries and tomatoes and stuff like that. But if they're really terrible at farming or gardening, hey, maybe I can help out with that. So I think the first step with teachable neighbor is you got to get to know your neighbors, man.
Yeah. We spend way too much time in our backyards with our friends from all over the other place and very little time with our neighbors.
Yeah.
And I think it's made our neighborhoods less everything good.
Yeah, no question about it. No question. Related to that, I want to give another shout out to your wife, Shannon. She has been one of my biggest cheerleaders with Rebranded Creations and biggest supporters. I got to meet your neighbor because he needed a project done, and Shannon said, "Oh, I know a guy that I think can do that." And it was a little ahead of my learning curve, the project that he needed. So I had to learn a little bit, but it was pretty cool putting that project together, working on the steps for him a little bit and getting to know your neighbor and looking over and, oh, there's Jerry. Hi, Shannon. How are you two? So that was kind of a cool tie in there to the teachable neighbor part.
Yeah, he's a great guy. Those are low incline stairs for him too. Yeah. He loves those.
Yeah, that's cool. I'm glad they worked out. And he came from, I think you said somewhere in California. He moved here.
Yeah.
So this idea of walking in the snow, that's.
Yeah. But he found Lansing to be a good place to move from. It's actually the opposite of Raven because she's going to LA and he came from that area.
Yeah.
So when I saw that prompt, I thought about the chickens immediately. And I thought about how so many kids will walk by here and like, oh, you got chickens, and I'll scoop one up and I'll be, have you ever petted one? Have you ever held one? Yeah. And I don't know, that just sticks out in my mind as one of the best out. I'm working with the 3 and 4 year olds mostly on that time.
Oh, sweet.
And I'm just, I think about, are they going to remember that in 5 or 10 years? Right. Are they going to remember they can trust me that I've got their best interest in mind and all of that. So,
well, and can they trust a chicken? I mean,
cannot trust a chicken.
No, because I was going to say those things are, at the art show we were just at today, Jody and I walked by and, somebody had made a handmade plaque that said this yard protected by yard raptors. And there were pictures of little chickens on the bottom. And I thought, oh yeah, if you've ever had your ankles pecked by a chicken, that's no lie.
I'm pretty sure if they were about 3 times bigger, they would be trying to eat me every day.
Yeah, probably.
No, they love me. I feed them.
I say you feed them. That helps.
So, do you is Rebranded Creations a hobby business for you, or do you want to make it bigger than that?
It's mostly a hobby business. One of my big trappings in life is that my idea of focus is like the next 45 seconds. So the idea of growing a business to a point that it's a money maker and actually is an income maker is like, oh yeah, I can do that. As soon as I'm done, doing this arts and craft thing and sewing these things and making these, vinyl albums into this art piece. And then I have all these pieces of clocks that I want to put together and create handmade clocks. And then, and then there's the Rebranded Creation stuff. And then, oh boy, So it's, at this point, it's just hobby level. Fortunately, because I just have lacked the focus to make it work better, to make it anything more than what it is. But boy, wouldn't it be nice if, every day I could get up and have my coffee and go out to my workshop. And that's my 8 hours for the day is building and marketing and putting my business in a position that there's a sustainable income coming in. Yeah, I'd like that. That'd be cool.
Is there, do you see a path for that, or you got I don't know, you probably need a little banked up. I'm not trying to imply you don't, but.
Right. I don't know. I learned about a decade ago, I got to kind of follow God's path in my life. And it's kind of an out of the blue segue, but I try not to think about where I'm going to be in 18 months because I don't know. Circumstances happen. I mean, I thought the agency I was at, I thought I'd retire from there, in 10 years from now. And, there was another path, there was another plan. So when that happened, I just kind of followed it and said, all right, cool. What's next? So it'd be cool if there was a path for it. It's not something that I'm bearing down on or coming up with my own business plan or anything. But I'm also open to if circumstances line up right and I could focus on one thing for more than, 12 or 14 minutes. Yeah, sure. Let's build a path,
Hey, the teacher rejected our assignment. We got to go back. It's not how are we going to teach our neighbors? How can we be a teachable neighbor?
How can we be taught? Shut up. Listen.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's, when we moved into our place in Grand Ledge and this wasn't by our design, it's just, again, it's where God put us, I think. But we moved in across from a beautiful family that had at that time 4 young kids and eventually 5 young kids, learning from them, learning parenting, learning patience with your kids, that kind of thing. That was cool. But it was just from sitting around and being around them and listening and watching. And then we had 2 retirees on each side. One was a World War II vet and a General Motors retiree like my dad. So just listening to him tell stories and his wife Lee listening to her tell stories and just soaking it in and just saying, they've been there and done that. They've been down this road way more times than we have. So let's listen and let's learn and let's love on them and let them love on us and just see, the goal is not to learn anything from them, but if you sit and listen, guess what? You learn things from them, It's the same way. I don't think I've ever sat through an official training that Jerry Norris has done, but just hanging out with you, I pick stuff up and I learn stuff. And just being around the Fledge and listening to the artists and the craftsmen and the people that are here, I never sat through a formal class at the Fledge, but oh my gosh, have I learned just tons of stuff just listening and just being here and just soaking up. And the same, when the Fledge was in Grand Ledge, just hanging out with people and listening. And I just go, wow, I never would have learned that if I had come here today with the intent of, this is what I want to learn today. All I want to do is hang out and listen to these cool people. Oh, and I learned something. That's pretty cool. So that'd be my answer.
And I would change my answer to probably still sitting on the porch there and waving at everybody and engaging. And it's still that pathway to getting to know them.
Yeah.
And I think when we first moved in Lansing, I had some people were outraged. Like, this place is dangerous. Right. It's too loud. It's, what is this? And it was just some fear that they had. And we got over that part. But I guess maybe one of my my prouder times is the house that's least easy to deal with. And that's, I'm just going to call it a drug house because I don't know what euphemism to use right now. Right. But where the dealer lives, where the people that are strung out go, and where some of them live. And I went over one day and asked them, I tried to give them some food, and they're like, oh man, your food is, sometimes it's beyond the sell-by date and stuff like that. And so they were kind of, I wouldn't say they were complaining about it, but it shocked me.
Somewhat critical.
Yeah. And it shocked me that was their concern.
Yeah.
Because it was, I should have known better, because, just because somebody can't afford food doesn't mean they don't deserve good food or great food or even a cigarette once in a while, whatever it might be. And they really taught me a lot about what they needed from us. And so anytime I get like fresh stuff that I know that they would like, I try to take a box over to them. I try to, or tell them, hey, there's new stuff there you guys might like. But again, I guess it surprised me because sometimes I think all they care about is their drug.
Yeah.
And it was an epiphany that it was so much more than, they have a whole other life around them.
Right.
And in my experience with Daniela, sometimes it didn't seem like that.
Yeah.
And so they really knocked me out of my, I guess my, whatever rut I was falling in.
Yeah. Yeah.
So good catch, Shannon. Thank you. And then, Edward Smith, who's one of my favorite artists in town, one of my Quakers. I agree. Listening is the pathways towards understanding. So seek first to understand and then to be understood.
Right.
So
friend gave me that on a plaque a while ago. Yeah.
Oh yeah. From Covey.
Yep.
What about other projects? Anything else and anything big?
Still trying to kind of do some trainings in the substance abuse prevention field, trying to get some of that stuff lined up through some other agencies. That's been kind of fun. Kind of toyed around with starting my own nonprofit or my own training agency, and that's kind of put that on the back burner for now. Partially just because of time and energy, but partially, the politics and the weaving and dodging and ducking that I really wasn't ready to do in order to get all the official stuff done, to be a training agency. Gosh, other than that, kids are, my sons are 20 and 22 now. Sam just texted from, he's out in Jackson, Wyoming. So just kind of keeping track of his life and seeing how he's doing. And then our 20-year-old is still at home, and kind of keeping up with him and his crazy antics and crazy adventures, just kind of being a parent and a husband and doing that part. I mentioned God earlier. I'm part of Impact Church, which is the church that's there in the Lansing Mall. Thank you to those of you who came up to us at the beginning and said, you guys aren't going to make it past a year. It's been 3 years. But we're going strong. I mean, the church has been around longer than that, but we've been a few years there in the mall. I'm a part of the leadership there. So there's always something going on there, Bible study groups or outreach stuff or just, just the Sunday service, prepping for Sunday service and getting things done and all the things that come with, all the behind the scenes work to making any endeavor work. So I've been pretty active with the church, just kind of generally keeping busy and trying to enjoy life and keep the stress level down and having a good time.
You're a board member of the Fledge Foundation.
Board member of the Fledge Foundation. Yep, Ezra and Reed and I get to be the board, and it's been nice because I think we're kept well informed of what's going on, but also it's not a board run, foundation. It definitely is a staff, even though the staff primarily is the Norris family and volunteers. It's very volunteer driven. It's been nice to be able to kind of be on that end. I mean, I've worked in nonprofits for 25 years as staff, so it's been nice to kind of be on the board end and see kind of the other side, but also see how the Fledge Foundation kind of went from Jerry being pissed off and saying, I'm not getting resources into people's hands fast enough. How do we get resources? Well, a lot of times, unfortunately, places are only going to give resources to nonprofits because they don't trust for-profits to do what you had already been doing, which is feeding people and loving on people and doing all that stuff. And that's where the Fledge Foundation, I think, came in, was we need to have a nonprofit entity in order to be able to take advantage of some of these resources that we're going to use to help the people here in the city of Lansing. So, the Fledge Foundation definitely wasn't Reed and Ezra and I sitting around going, hey, let's come up with a new nonprofit. No, it was, really, Jerry, you drove it and your family drove it and said, how do we get resources from out there in the universe to here in Lansing where people need them? So that's been kind of a cool experience.
I think you're discounting your role too much, though, because I mean, you will write out, well, what about this? What about this? And what about this? And make sure that we're doing the right things and we're covering that we're being very diligent with the resources that the public does give us, and keeping that in the forefront that this is the public that owns the Fledge Foundation. And you got, a lot of that governance has been invaluable. So I appreciate you very, very much.
I thought I was just being a pain in the butt. So I'm glad that being a pain in the butt sometimes does bear some good fruit. And a lot of that is, it's not only being, part of the public interest and making sure the public is taken care of. A lot of that is, nonprofits are so regulated. Like a lot of people say, well, why don't you run your nonprofit like a business? Because I can't, because we actually have to follow the rules. Nonprofits are so scrutinized, not only by the IRS, but the Attorney General's office and things like that, that you can, for a season, a nonprofit can get away with just about anything. But sooner or later, there's going to be an audit, or there's going to be a site visit, or there's going to be, somehow somebody's going to say, oh, did you turn in that paperwork? We haven't turned that in the last 5 years. Well, guess what? You're not a nonprofit anymore then. Bam. So nonprofits are really, really highly scrutinized and highly regulated. And if businesses want to whine about being over-regulated, I'm like, well, then just go to the other side of the street for a minute. Just go try running a nonprofit for 5 minutes, and you will be dying to get back to the for-profit side, because for-profits are heavily regulated depending on what you're doing. But nonprofits across the board, it doesn't matter what you're doing. You better be ready to follow somebody else's rules.
Yeah. Well, thanks for bringing that to the table, for sure.
You're welcome.
And all your experience in substance use. We definitely,
thanks. That means a lot. Thank you.
We want to tap more into that, actually. So
I'm available.
Anyway, we'll get there.
When you get back, let me know. Yeah.
What Do you have a way that you kind of look like? Are you on a mission to do something? Is there like does Rebranded Creations and your substance abuse work and even what you're doing now, do they fit together?
I mentioned my faith a little bit, but I mean, I really, really believe I'm not in charge of any of this. I'm a, you see that bumper sticker all the time that says, God is my co-pilot. And I think, what kind of damn fool would want the guy that created the universe to be your co-pilot? Why not let him be the pilot? He seems to know what he's doing. And a lot of people have an argument and a beef with God, and that's okay too. But for me, it's like I'm a passenger here. I'm a spectator in this sport. And if I want to be involved, it's my job to jump in. And if I want to be a spectator, it's my job to step back and just watch. But I do believe I'm not in charge of any of this stuff. So I try to follow where I feel like God's leading me, and where God's leading my family, and where God's leading our church. And if I have a business, it's where does God want that business? And if God says tomorrow, clearly and definitively, quit your job and put all your time and effort and money into Rebranded and make that a business, I guess I'm going to give that a whirl. I'm going to call my buddy Jerry and say, dude, I have no idea how to do this. How do I do this? And hope that you'll have the time to help me do it. But if I have a mission, it's just following where God leads and doing what he says and not getting so wrapped up in how important I am and, the role that I play and going with the flow.
My good friend Mark over here is trying to, he's correcting you, saying God's a she.
You can go there too.
Yeah. Is there something you do every damn day to push that forward?
I try to give credit where credit's due. I do thank God a lot for cool things that happen in my life, not only in the big picture, but in the minutia, in the details. I've said before, when God closes the door, he usually throws you through another window. But also giving credit to the people around me and to the human beings. Without the Fledge, there's no Rebranded Creations. Without Jerry, there's no Fledge. So it's like, okay, where did Rebranded come from? Well, it's this guy that kind of created an environment and an atmosphere where people could create and grow and learn new things, and that's where Rebranded came from. And it was my friend Joel that said, dude, you need a hobby. Oh, okay. Well, so it was Joel that was kind of pushing me to do something in the in-betweens and the gaps when I was just kind of sitting around doing nothing. So part of Rebranded was Joel, and part of Rebranded is my wife just putting up with not being able to park her car in the garage. So where are those opportunities to give credit where I might have done something, but I did it standing on someone else's shoulders? Well, whose shoulders am I standing on? And make sure you vocalize that, you say it out loud. I mean, that's why I want to shout out, to Shannon, because again, she, when I first started building stuff, she would get mad because I'm giving everything away. She's like, dude, you got to start charging for this stuff. You're trying to build a business. And I'm like, my nonprofit brain couldn't wrap itself around monetizing stuff. So I'd be like, oh, I'll just donate. I'll just give it. I'll do it for $10. $10, you put $20 worth of screws into that project. How can you do it for $10? So your wife was huge in pushing me to act like a business. So if I do anything every damn day, it's trying to give credit where credit's due, because it's not the Ken Dail show that got me where I am. I'm just the Ken Dail part of it. It's everybody around me. It's all the influences. It's all the cool stuff that's happening. It's God that's in charge of the universe to begin with, that's brought me to the place that I am. So trying to give credit, I think, is a big part of what I try to do every day.
And so let's throw a little credit to Keith Mulder and some of the people in the room of the Grand Ledge Alliance for Equality Community. Yeah. Because I wanted to buy that school for $1 and put some center for innovation in there.
We were there. Yeah.
And we didn't quite get that far, which I'm actually very happy we did not at the time. Indeed. And Keith basically gave us a free space. I mean, he charged rent, but it wasn't that much and all that. And got us really going and incubated us out of his building there. Yeah. So
And I even think about some of the other, that's where I met Jerry, was at those Alliance meetings back, 100 years ago. And my pastor was the one that sent me to those meetings, and said, hey, go and see what they're going to do with the school. That the Alliance is probably the group that knows. And I said, oh, okay. So there's all these VIPs and these important people around the city of Grand Ledge, and some of the people that have, felt like the city founders, that have been around for 200 years. And then there's me. And I'm going, fish out of water here, like, gosh, these are all the important people. But that's where I met you. So I'm grateful that the Alliance was there, and it introduced me not only to you, but to Keith and some of those other kind of rowdy radicals that were there, and movers and shakers. But yeah, those were the days. And you're right. I'm glad our church didn't end up acquiring the school too, because our church was one of the other groups that was saying, hey, let's do something with that building. But I'm glad in retrospect that didn't come to pass.
They didn't add me to that because I was some sort of well-respected founder there. They needed to shake things up. And
I wasn't going to say that, but you shook things up. Yeah.
Which is basically why I've ever been added to any board or organization for the past 20 years, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
But don't clump me in with that.
I feel you.
But you were in the room when it happened.
Yeah.
When we said we are going to do this now. And it did happen in one of those rooms. Well, probably a lot more formally with Keith and I, but
yeah. Well, and I can remember you guys, you especially really talking about the concept of the Fledge before the name was even created. And I mean, we had folks there from the city council. Keith was the mayor pro tem at the time. I think he still is. We had the superintendent. We had the chief of police. We had the people who really could make things happen. And I remember the Fledge, one of the early iterations was, how can we incorporate this in the schools? Or how can we help students who are those kind of non-traditional, non-academic students catch hold of entrepreneurialism, catch hold of the trades, catch hold of, some of those things. And the school couldn't do it. The gears are too big. There's too much red tape. The city couldn't do it. A lot of the same reasons. There's liability. And then there's Jerry sitting over here with this impish little grin going, we can do this. We can do this. We can do this. We can do this without you guys. And I remember sitting there and listening to that for months and months and months. And finally, at one of the meetings, I got kind of torqued off, and I'm like, Jerry, they aren't going to do it. What the hell are you waiting for? And you kind of smiled, and Mulder smiled, and you both kind of looked at each other and said, shh, just wait. The news is coming. And at that point, I knew, like, oh yeah, they did something. Nobody knows what they did yet, but they've done something. And that was the part where you guys had already hatched the Fledge. I mean, you knew where you were moving into. It was just a matter of time of kind of formalizing this and making sure all the I's were dotted and T's were crossed before you made an announcement. But I was just sitting back going, oh, this is going to be good. This is going to be good. So, and here you are, a few years later, and dang, it's good.
Well, we were having our coding club meetings in the restaurant, the Log Jam, in the back room a bunch of times before we had anything.
Yeah.
And I think we used the name the first time in 2014, maybe, but we've been talking about it for a while.
Yeah.
So but thanks for being there.
Yeah. You're welcome.
Did I ask you what do you do every damn day? I did ask you that.
Yeah,
sorry.
give credit.
Yeah,
I try to give credit where credit's due. Yeah.
I got lost for a second. Sorry about that.
That happens.
So I daisy chained the shows together. Yesterday I had a track coach, Ramon Brunson, on the show.
Yeah.
And his question that he wants me to ask you is, what is something you'd like to learn?
Yeah. Good question. There's a lot. I was actually talking to my wife Jody about this last night, and sitting at the Log Jam, and she said, well, you have a few new tools that you haven't used yet. Like you have a lathe and you don't even know how to use it. And I know that there's like some woodworking stuff that you want to do that you don't know how to do. And I said, boy, that sounds like focus almost, like learning more about the woodworking. Because when Coach said that yesterday, my brain just went in 100 different directions. I was watching yesterday, listening yesterday. My brain went in 100 different directions. Oh man, I want to go to culinary school. I want to go to Bible school. All I have is a bachelor's degree right now. I think I want to be a counselor, when I grow up, a therapist. So maybe go back to school. And then I thought, wait a minute, that wasn't his question. His question wasn't, what do you want to go to school for? It was, what do you want to learn? So in talking to Jody, when she said, well, maybe some fine skills in woodworking, I thought, yeah, that is something that I'd like to learn. Is because when you're doing woodworking, you can do some real basic stuff. And then, as you know, you can get more advanced and, different joints and different ways to bring wood together and different kinds of wood even, and hardwood versus softwood. And I thought, that's something I'd like to learn, is more detail work and more fine work with woodworking. That'd be kind of fun, even though I didn't grow up a woodworker. It's kind of interesting stuff. I'm even sitting here looking at this table going, dude, that's pretty cool the way they put that together. So I'd like to learn more in woodworking, I think.
Yeah, nice.
And it feels like focus, which is weird for me.
I'd like to learn how to do a podcast.
Yeah.
I've been hacking. Oh,
you had a couple hundred shots at it, so,
Well, 323 to be exact.
Yeah, there you go.
So I forgot to mention that at the beginning. You are episode 323.
323. All right.
So, LaShawn from the Poor People's Campaign came up to me the other day and said, "Hey, I told your wife I'm 301," and then I thought she was thinking about or talking about something completely different than what she was, and I was trying to say, "Does she really mean that?" And then it was she was episode 301. So your assigned number is 323. No,
I'll remember that. Got brand it in my arm.
So tomorrow I have a good friend, Sam Cho. Who will be, I think I'm saying his name wrong. My good friend Sam. I got to get that corrected I might be wrong. And we are going to talk about disability pride and disability month and stuff like that. What question would you like me to pass to him?
I'm not exactly sure how to word it, so I might have to play with it for a second here. But how do you show other people that you love them, that you care for them, other than saying it, other than the words? Because the words are important, and we should say the words. Don't just let it be implied. Well, I told her I love her when I married her, and it hasn't changed in 20 years. So no, you got to say the words. But then, how do you show people that you love them or that you care about them, other than just saying those words? What actions? What verb is there?
Another kind of Covey concept. He says you cannot talk your way out of situations you behave yourself into.
I believe that.
That's immediately popped in my head when you asked that question or told me that was going to be the question earlier.
Yeah.
What do you do?
I don't know. I try to serve. I try to lift people up. I try to edify, build people up. I try not to tear people down. Usually people already know their shortcomings, so I get a little pissed off when people say, "Man, you could really lose some weight." Oh, thanks. Wasn't aware. So when I'm around other people, I don't feel like I have to tell them, what their shortcomings are. I'd rather tell them, "Man, you got a gorgeous smile. Hey, that tattoo, you got some nice ink. Where'd you, what's that mean? That shirt's pretty cool." Or try to find something to just be nice to people, and just lift them up and let them know that they're noticed for something other than their annoying laugh or the fact that their eyes are crooked or they're, whatever. All the crap that people normally point out. I just want people to know I think they're pretty cool, and I care about them. And the words are important, because you can be nice to somebody your whole life and never say, "I love you. I love you, Jerry. I love working with you and I love what you're doing." You already know that from our friendship and our relationship over the last, almost decade. But to say it sometimes is cool too. But that's what I try to do, is lift people up, build people up, be nice, serve others, that kind of thing.
As you were kind of saying, well, I don't know, I was thinking, all right, I'm going to answer this for him and jump right in there because, I don't know at what point we will say we love each other when we're saying goodbye and stuff like that. I don't know when we started doing that. But it's all the other things that I already knew that. Exactly what you said. You've always been a big supporter. You've always helped me. You've always pushed me. And that does make me feel loved. So I think you
so
do
it works.
Good job of that. Yes.
Sweet.
Yeah. happiness, sadness, joy, hope, or love? Which one would you like to talk about, or which ones for that?
Well, I'm normally I'm a happy, joy, goof off. I enjoy hearing laughter, but in watching enough of the Every Damn Days, nobody wants to talk about sadness. I mean, there's been 300 shows, and I think you said what, maybe 3 times people have said, let's talk about sadness. And I think sadness needs to be talked about because it's a natural emotion. It's not it doesn't have to be a negative emotion. It's, some people are like, oh, that's one of those bad emotions. No, it doesn't have to be, So sadness, I'd like to talk about sadness.
Yeah. So, I think that let's actually, do you want to expound or do you want me to ask you stuff?
Yeah, go ahead and ask.
Okay. So, why, I think you were saying it's a bad, or it's not a bad emotion. Right. Do you label emotions as good or bad, or?
I usually don't. And some of that was the field that I was in. You go through a lot of trying to assess communities and assess people and work with people. And when you talk about substance abuse, a lot of people come into the field because they've been through some experiences, either themselves or their loved ones. So there's a lot of anger, there's a lot of frustration, there's a lot of sadness, there's a lot of that kind of thing. And a long time ago, I learned, no, sometimes it's appropriate to be sad. And it's not a negative emotion. It could have, more often than not, negative outcomes. Same thing with anger. There's times where being pissed off is the 100%, the right thing to do. It's what do you do with that energy? It can be very negative, or you can use it to propel a movement, that kind of thing. So I try not to say, oh, that's a bad emotion. I always told my kids growing up, it's okay to be sad. It's okay to be angry. It's even okay to be angry at me as your dad. In fact, if we go a whole day and you're not angry at me once, I need to up my game as a parent, So no, I try not to label emotions as being good or bad or negative or whatever.
Do you see a lot of people that shy away from sadness, or what are they doing? Just, they're shoving it way down and then pouring alcohol.
They do it themselves. Right? I went through some classes a season ago, and they talked about gunny sacking, and it's when you just take all, gunny sacks are those big bags that they use in the military. This was their comparison or their language, but they said, when you fill one of those gunny sacks, it's pretty damn heavy. And if you just take all of your negative emotions or emotions that people think of as being negative, all your anger, all your frustration, all your sadness, and you just stuff it in that bag, and you do that long enough, that bag gets pretty heavy. And pretty soon you can't function, and even the simple things in life, you're not finding any happiness or any joy, and it's hard to love, and it's hard to, because that gunny sack is just weighing you down because you never dealt with what's in it. So instead, when you're sad, okay, be sad. Why are you sad? Do you want to be sad for a minute? Do you want to be sad for an hour? Do you want to move through it? If you're sad for more than, a set amount of time, it might be you need to see somebody about this because it really can start leading to some very negative outcomes. But that's what I see people do, is just shove it down and like, I'm not going to get mad about this. Why not? Get mad. That's fine.
Why do you think people, I know that, a lot of men, I know what men do, so I'm going to stay in that space for right now. We don't admit we're sad. We try not to be sad. We hold back tears because it's like a sign of weakness or whatever.
Yeah.
And I think the weakest, imagine a father not being sad because something happened to one of his children.
Right.
That would be a weakness to me, not a strength.
Yeah, it doesn't let you live, I mean, guess what? Life sucks sometimes. And it's, whether it's getting pulled over because you were speeding, or the loss of a loved one, or somebody gets cancer, and it's just so damn unfair. Yeah, it is unfair. It is. Okay. Life's not fair. And if you're mad about it, be mad. And if you're sad about it, be sad. And if it makes you cry, then here's some tissues and here's a shoulder, cry away. I'm not going to fault somebody for being emotional, Now, again, what they do with those emotions, if you get mad and start beating somebody up, not a good solution. That's going to cause more trouble than it's worth. If you get mad to the point that it starts turning into, more of the signs of clinical depression, if you're not leaving the house, and if you're, all of a sudden you can't do anything anymore, and you're starting to have suicidal thoughts, or et cetera, okay, that's bad. Let's get you through this. But I think being sad when sad things happen is kind of normal. If it didn't work, just think of all the commercials on TV that would be just complete failures. You're supposed to feel. you're supposed to have emotions. You're supposed to feel certain ways when you see certain things happening. So.
Yeah. Well, you just, we had a couple suicides over the last couple weeks, and had the memorials here and all of that. And I do think, sometimes you look at somebody and they're always happy and they're always outgoing and they're always there for other people and they're absorbing sometimes the other person's sadness,
Yeah.
And I think that, I wonder, is that were they putting it in the gunny sack? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
All the time, and it just got heavier and heavier and heavier until they turned on themselves.
Yeah. I think that's a possibility. I think, when we talk about suicide and end of life stuff like that, I think it's just like drug use or substance abuse. It's, there's probably not a single that you can say, boy, if we just would do this, it would end all suicides. I don't think so. I think that there's multiple things that can be done. And I think one of them is frankly, talking about sadness. I'm sad, I'm depressed. Okay, do you want me to help you move through this, or do you want me to just sit down and be with you while you're sad?
Yeah.
Because I'm not going to push you into not being sad anymore. That's BS. That's not healthy. Oh, Jerry, you're sad because blah blah blah. Well, damn it, let's go get ice cream and quit being sad. Well, maybe what you need to do is just snap out of it. And if that works, great, run with it. But maybe you just need to be sad for a season, and maybe I just need to sit with you and say it's okay. It's okay. I'm going to stop being a smartass for a minute and stop with my nonstop jokes. And I'm just going to be here with you, and we can be sad together, and that's cool. And when we're done, then we'll go get ice cream. But not until you're done and you feel like you're ready for it. Not talking about it, I think, is a huge issue.
So again, connection. I think that depression and addiction and overdose and suicide, I think they are cousins. I mean, they are related. I think they go hand in hand. And I think that suicide and overdoses are sometimes just called an overdose when probably it was a lot more than that.
It was intentional. And I think that's why in the news so much you hear accidental overdose. This was not a person trying to take their own life. It was just somebody who got too much drugs for their system, versus, this person was intentionally trying to take their own lives and they used drugs, to do it, whether it's, whatever, fentanyl or just overdose them with opioids or, whatever it is. Yeah, I think some of them are people taking their own lives. It's just that was the vehicle that they used was some substance, whatever it was.
So I'm going to make a call out to everybody again. Call some friends. Call someone you haven't talked to. Call someone who you have talked to, because both instances of ours or in our community where people were talking to them. It was we thought it was okay.
Yeah.
And we got to be honest with ourselves and with each other.
Yeah.
Open and honest, and find someone to trust and go tell them about it. Talk to them about it.
Yeah.
Dude, thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
I was so disappointed when you signed up, because it was like 3 months away.
Yeah.
And I was like, what the hell, man? Like, we could do this show tomorrow and it would be a good show.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that I didn't think this day would actually ever get here, because it seemed like so long ago.
Well, thank you.
It was like a show 3:30 or 2:30 or something like that.
Yeah, it was a while ago.
Show I was on.
Yeah.
So now we're at 323, and great show, man. I liked it a lot.
Thank
And one real quick, Mark, we're not mad at you for your comment. Right, keeping it. He apologized in the messenger to me, but no apology necessary at all.
Was that the she comment or?
Yeah.
Oh gosh, no. I mean, that's the other fun thing is when you get to a certain point, it's like, I'll tell you about my God if you want to sit down and listen. But if you're one of those flying spaghetti monster people, I'm all right with that. If you're a Seventh-day Adventist, I'm all right with that. If you're an atheist, I'm all right with that. It's not, it doesn't have to be my way or the highway. My faith teaches that, but I'm not the kind of guy that's like, well, that's that's not what you believe something weird. I mean, look, we believe in a guy that came out of the tomb 3 days after being dead. Most people in a hot, smelly tomb after 3 days, you don't want to see him, right? I mean, just imagine that. And this dude, Jesus, like, came out and he's our savior. In my religion, in my faith, he's our savior. He's the one that we're putting all of our eggs in his basket. And he came back from the dead after 3 days. That's a weird thing to believe. I mean, it really is. So if you believe that your savior is going to come from a spaceship, or you think that your savior is going to come from the east or the west or the north or from a mountain or out of a river or whatever, I'll still talk to you. And I'm not going to be like, dude, how could you be so stupid? Because I've read my Bible and there's some stuff in there that if you believe it, it defies logic, So you just have to have this thing called faith. And if you got faith in something other than what I have faith in, that doesn't mean you're stupid. It just means you got faith in something other than what I got faith in. That's all, So yeah, Mark, don't sweat it. If you think God's a she, that's cool. I'm all right with that. I ain't gonna get upset about that. So.
All right. And Mark's trying to get me a guess that Dan Severn, if you know who that is.
Yeah. I saw that the other day. The Beast.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be a good one.
We'll see if we can make that happen.
That'd be awesome. If you can get him to Antarctica and then be your guest.
That would be awesome.
We'll be on to something.
So, all right. So I'm traveling a little bit. The show's still going to be at 2:00 Eastern time, I think, unless somebody needs a different time. I'll accommodate them. And every damn day at 2 p.m. And what would you like to take us out with, Ken?
Well, I've been thinking about that a lot too. So I'm standing on the porch here about 2 years ago at the Fledge, and Ezra, my fellow board member, and Ezra and I aren't close. We're not good buddies. We know each other. That's about it. But Ezra was here. They were painting that day. They were doing all the work out front, doing all the painting. And as that group of young people, went to leave, you were inside, and you kind of shouted out, "Hey, we'll see you guys. Thanks for the help. We'll see you, Ezra." And he yells out, "I love you, Jerry." And you yelled out, "I love you too." And that's kind of where I started this concept, this idea of like, how do you live your life so that people who love you can tell you that they love you? So it's not just a matter of me saying, "Jerry, I love you." It's a matter of what does Jerry do to make it okay for anyone to say, "Jerry, I love you." And what do I do so that Jerry can say, "I love you" back to me? How do I live in that way? Because some people say it no matter what. They don't care how you act. They love you and they're going to tell you. But what can I do to make that an easier thing? It's like talking about sadness. What can I do to make it easier for someone who cares about me, who loves me, to say, "I love you"? And whatever those things are for you, do them. Do them. Because it builds that connectedness and it brings that closeness together. And it just makes it a whole lot easier for the Ezras of the world, to shout out, "Jerry, I love you," and for Jerry to shout back, "I love you too. We'll see ya." What a weird environment. Well, let's create more weird environments like that, where people can express their love for one another without it being like, "Did he just say he loves you? Well, that's kind of weird." No, it's not weird. It's pretty natural. Would you rather he say, "I hate you"? That would suck, So go out and do something or make some changes in your life that make it easier for the people who love you to be able to tell you that they love you. And that's what I'll leave you on.
And with that, we love you all, and we hope you have a good night, and we will see you tomorrow. Thanks very much, Ken.
Yeah, thanks.
Yep. Bye-bye, everyone.